I want to build tools that generate those insights, like that make data more easy to consume.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's basically what my career has been for the most part. I've done a lot of other things in software development, but helping people gain insights has been like the most rewarding part of my job.
Hi, my name is Tabitha Owanda and you're watching InterSTEM. So today's interview is very unique. It's with a software developer named Okal. He's a tech lead at Jomo, Kenya, and we talked about his journey into tech. We also talked about some of the lessons that he's learned along the way and some of the important skills that upcoming developers need to have. And so I'd like to share this interview with you, and I hope it's as informative for you as it was for me. Yeah, so what's one app that you use on a daily basis, and what would you change about it to make it more effective for you?
Okay, there's actually two, so I'm struggling to choose.
Okay.
But I've found that I have this constant need to take notes now and draw diagrams, descriptive diagrams. So I use this app called Notability that works very well with an iPad and an Apple Pencil. And it syncs across all my devices. So if I need to think, it really helps me to sketch. So I'll do that on the iPad, and then if I need to present these thoughts to a wider group, I'll open it up on my laptop and hey, here it is. Yeah, so Notability, like I don't know what I'll do about it.
Okay.
But I find the diagram functions a little limiting, so I quite often jump into another app called Lucid Chat, which is better for that sort of thing, but does not, like it's not a note-taking application, so
Yeah.
I find myself shifting between them, but if I had to choose one, it would be Notability.
So you're a developer, yeah?
Yes.
Who uses apps on a daily basis. All these three. Why not just create something amazing that combines all the three features that you're looking for right across? Because I'm sure if you're using them, there's a couple of people just like you.
Yeah. You know, like, I mean, that's a pretty good question. But I've found, so the thing that happens is if you've been writing software for a while, you find that you have an affinity for certain aspects of software development.
Okay.
So those sorts of productivity tools are not it for me. I really like working with, well, not with, but on tools that help people gain insights into data they already have. So that's like visualizations and stuff. So I'm not passionate enough about productivity tools to build one. I'm a passionate user of them, but not a passionate builder of productivity tools. Yeah.
This is an honest question, but I feel like I should already know the answer.
Yeah.
Are there people who get paid to test software?
Yes.
What are they called?
Depends on the organization. So you
Okay.
might find them known as quality analysts, but at Juno we call them quality engineers because it's also an engineering discipline. They also build tools. They write tests, automated tests, so that instead of a human sitting down and clicking bits and bobs on a user interface or on an app, let me say an app, they could tell another system, hey, go and click these things and give me an output, like did it work as it was expected to? So things like those. So that's the engineering aspect of quality control or quality assurance. Yeah, so they do exist and they get paid for it, and they're a very important part of any team that wants to ship good software.
So you said that your journey has been very rewarding.
Yes.
So is there a point, like a highlight in your tech journey that was pivotal to where you are today?
Yeah, a few actually, but I think the biggest one was one of the biggest anyway. When I was in uni, one of my internships was with a startup in the Nairobi tech scene called Wezatele, and it was crazy because I got to work on all these different projects and got paid for it for the first time, which was pretty cool. And incidentally, Wezatele was acquired by a different company called AFB. At this point, I wasn't working with Wezatele, but these two companies together became Juno. So yeah, like I've basically, in a certain sense, come back home. The fact that I'm working here, because that was my first proper tech job at Wezatele. I learned a lot because I basically got to exercise a lot of different interests that I had, because at the time I was also doing quite a bit of design, like visual design and user interface design. It's not really something I do anymore, but it was something I really enjoyed at the time. So I got to do a bit of that. I also got to, those things in uni where like even your professor might tell you, this is a really cool thing to know, but you'll probably never use it.
Yeah.
I got to use quite a few of those while I was working there, so it was like...
So it wasn't entirely useless, yeah.
It was actually really fun.
Yeah.
So that was like, I'd say, a formative part of my career.
So you've talked about years of practice to become a good developer, programmer, coder. What's a term, by the way? Is it?
There are, I guess, subtle distinctions between the terms. Like, being a programmer does not necessarily mean you're a developer. And this one is a little more contentious. Being a software developer does not mean that you are a software engineer necessarily. To an extent, they're sort of like fungible terms, like use one instead of the other, but they emphasize different skill sets, like in terms of building technology. So as a developer, let's start with like the basics. As a programmer, your job is basically to understand algorithms, to write them out, to tell computers what to do. I feel that as a developer, your job is to, or your work, I think work is a better term, is to translate business requirements into working code. So all of these things are kind of, the output is code to an extent. So like as a developer, there's more of an emphasis on understanding the context in which you're working, like in terms of business or just the social context. Then as an engineer, then you introduce the disciplines of engineering. You have to think about things like cost. So this is like the distinction, for example, between a scientist and an engineer. A scientist has things in terms of ideals, like this input should lead to this output always, right? But I think an engineer thinks in terms of constraints. It's this input should lead to this output, but we can only afford 90% of it. So the engineer will build for that. Will build taking into account the realities around them. They're not operating in this, like, from this space of like just mental models. They have to take like things like cost, things like performance into consideration. So an engineer would be happy with something that fulfills 80% of the thing, but for a scientist, it's, I think, a much more. Scientists are more pure, like purists, I guess, in a sense.
Oh yeah, it's like what you said. It's like very ideal. It's like in a bubble.
Yeah. And that's fantastic because it moves our collective knowledge as human beings forward. And these two impulses, they generally exist like within the same person. So if you're an engineer with scientific inclinations, then you have to know when to switch that off and put on your engineering hat. Then you have to tap into your knowledge as a developer, because I think developer is a subset of, well, software engineer is a subset of software developer, which is a subset of programmer. You have to tap into all these other things you know as a developer about like who your users are. So as a developer, you'll be thinking about things like accessibility, like can someone with limited eyesight use my app, things like this. But even a physicist working in a lab is a programmer, because they're using code to solve their own problems, but I wouldn't necessarily call them a software developer because they might not have those sorts of product-related skills. Yeah. And then I wouldn't necessarily call all software developers software engineers, because not all of them are operating within the confines of like engineering as a discipline.
So being a developer involves a lot of learning new things. Over the course of the years, you have learned a couple of skills that you probably didn't have before.
Yes.
So what has that done? Like, how has that impacted your character?
Yeah.
And how has that impacted your work ethic?
So I think when you start out and you have, I don't know if to say like a natural inclination, but you get good at certain aspects of software development quite quickly.
Mm-hmm.
It's it can lead to a certain overconfidence in your abilities. And that's something I think I see with a lot of younger developers, and I remember in myself when I was younger. But then as you get exposed to more and more difficult problems, you have to learn a certain amount of humility. You have to learn a certain amount of you have to acquire the ability to say, I actually don't know, I will figure it out.
Mm-hmm.
Because you're often looked upon within your team as the person with the technical answers, which you don't always have. So I feel like the way it's shaped my character is just a certain amount of intellectual humility I've had to learn, because I'm also surrounded by other incredibly smart people who are constantly challenging me. And I feel like that's been the most helpful thing. And in how it's shaped, I don't know if this falls under work ethic really, but it also forces me. It's something I struggle with, to be honest, but it forces me to cultivate a certain amount of patience when relating to people who are also learning. Like, I have to acknowledge that we are also we know different things.
Mm-hmm.
And so when someone approaches me with a question where I feel like this is a thing you should already know, I've had to learn patience and to approach them with curiosity and to approach them with, I want to say joy. I want to rather than take it as a chance to show them what they don't know, it's a chance to learn for myself, how much do I actually know, and also a chance to just make someone's life a little easier. Something I learned quite early on during that internship at Attribution was quite often I would ask my boss questions when I was stuck. And the thing about development is I think it demands so much focus when you're working on a difficult problem. So I would find myself interrupting him when he was in the zone, and he's like an infinitely patient person. But one day he told me I should not ask things which I can Google. And that has really sort of shaped my thinking around learning. in a social context, because it's very easy to like tap someone's shoulder, but it means you're going to cost them an hour of focus by just asking that one question if they're already deep in the zone. So I would say it's those two things, like humility, but also, how do I phrase this? It's forced me to like learn how to fend for myself in certain senses. Then when I'm stuck, it's much easier to go to someone with clearer questions to say, okay, I found this explanation for how this should work for this concept, but I'm struggling with this part of it, rather than, hey, please explain this massive concept to me and give me 2 hours of your day when I could spend 20 minutes to learn what I can, and then ask you, at some point, ask you to explain an especially sticky bit of it.
Speaking of skills that you've learned, what's one non-technical skill that developers need in order to be successful? And that's like completely up to you.
The measure of success?
The measure of success, and that all developers need. So that all is
okay.
Yeah.
I think empathy is often phrased as a feeling or a thing that happens, but I think it's a thing you have to cultivate. If you're going to build good software, you have to empathize with your users, you have to empathize with the people around you who are also building this software. I really just want to say empathy. It's a huge one. You need to understand people's motivations. So when someone comes to you with a feature request that seems on the surface like it doesn't really make a lot of sense, you need to try and look at it from their perspective. When someone puts in like a support request, it's not, hey, this button isn't working, it's, hey, there's this thing I can't do today because this button isn't working. And to you it's like, yeah, I have other things to do and I will fix it, I'll get to it, but you get more of a sense of urgency when you perceive those people who are using your system as people. And then working within a team context, empathy in the sense of if people are struggling with other aspects of their lives, this is going to reflect in their ability to deliver as developers, and that's something you have to learn. Because this isn't a thing that you're taught in a software development class. You're taught, hey, this is JavaScript, this is how it looks, this is Java, this is Python, whatever. This is how you build things in it, but you're generally not taught how to interact with the other people within that space. And honestly, it's the hardest part of being a developer. So empathy, yeah. I think it's a skill because you have to practice it, and it's easier for some people than others.
What's one question? You hardly... Hold on, I'm gonna rephrase that. The last time you were speaking in my presence, you said you like it when people ask you interesting questions. So what's one question you hardly ever get asked as a software developer or a software architect that you wish people asked you more often?
That is incredibly difficult to answer.
Well,
I feel like it needs months of thinking and rumination. I think it's a question people should ask each other more than like ask me. And I count myself among each other.
Okay.
Like, what are you currently obsessed about as far as tech is concerned?
Okay.
Not because then it goes back to like the childlike sort of curiosity that led a lot of us down this path. It's like, oh, how does this work? I'd like to learn how to build a thing like this. And I think it's very easy to lose that as you keep working. But when you ask someone what they're currently obsessed about, then I think it disarms them in a certain way. Like, they don't have to justify why they are obsessed about this thing. It's just, oh, there's this really cool new programming language I found out about, whatever, and yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that's a question I wish more people asked each other.
Can I ask you that question?
You could.
Okay, so Okal,
Yes.
what are you currently obsessed with in tech?
Huh. So it's not like a specific technology, but I'm trying to automate certain aspects of my life. And a lot of that wouldn't be possible without, it would be possible, but it would be a lot more expensive, a lot more difficult without what's known as like serverless technology, which is, yeah, I mean, like I'll go into it a little, but basically you build your software in a way that it's not reliant on a long-running computer process. Like if I want to use your software, it will be spun up, like the system that's running it, the computer that's running it, will be created just for me to use, and then it will be destroyed after. So it basically means that, are you familiar with like hosting?
No, hosting websites? Maybe.
Yeah.
Okay.
Basically,
Yeah.
hosting websites, hosting web applications. You generally pay for like a month, right? But when you're working with serverless, it's like very granular. It's how many seconds did it take to run your app for this person, and that's what you pay for, right? And that's like a really cool concept because it changes a lot of the economics around building software. Not everything is suited to that sort of workflow, but I'm very excited to see what people are going to build over the next few years. Like people are already doing like really interesting things, and I think it will just get cooler and cooler. Yeah, because it's such an exciting new technology. Like people haven't built social conventions around like this is how you should do it. It's like do whatever the hell you want. That's a really good place to be.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, awesome. I think that's interesting because I've learned something new today. I didn't even know that existed. Yeah, thank you so much for speaking to me.
Cool.
And spending nearly an hour.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks for this.
You are welcome.